One thing that has been consistently done throughout the history of storytelling is personification, or giving human characteristics and traits to non-human things. A lot of Greco-Roman characters were, to an extent, personifications of ideas or feelings, or natural phenomenons. Usually when people think of personification, they think of animals and a lot of children's stories, or that's what I'm assuming. But a lot of political cartoons do involve personification, which leads into country balls/humans, which I don't want to talk about right now. Personification is a useful tool, both in storytelling and teaching, as simplifying certain aspects of events or concepts and turning them into characters can help people understand better. So now we have solar balls, which is like country balls, but for planets that were already balls. Now they have faces. Solar Balls is an edutainment YouTube channel that uses personified objects in our solar system to teach people about astronomy and also to tell increasingly complex stories. Over time, episode lengths have increased, and although it does still maintain an educational aspect, it has become more story-focused, although that is mainly for the moon revolution thing. But there is a story, and with every story there is a protagonist and an antagonist. Although Solar Balls doesn't have a set antagonist, it seems that people do believe that the sun is the main villain of the show. And I disagree with this. I don't really think the sun is a villain, which is a really weird thing to say out loud. But the reputation of being a villain feels really unearned to me. I've read comments of people saying that he is evil or a psychopath, neither being true. And of course, a villain doesn't need to be pure evil, but again, I don't really think there is a villain of Solar Balls. There are temporary antagonists or antagonistic forces, but a consistent villain? Not really. Well, like, you could argue that Astro Dude's boss is a villain, but, like, Astro Dude isn't always the focus of the show, so... And, like, antagonist just means, like, a character that's in opposition to the protagonist, so Astro Dude's boss would not always fit that description. Although the sun is one of my favorite characters, I love his complicated friendship with Mercury and the way that he is lonely. And apart from one other person on Tumblr, I don't really see anyone talk about him. And I want to talk about him because of this, and also because I just like to talk. Please ignore that this is the second time I've made a video talking about a character that is named the Sun. So what are the arguments for the sun being a villain? Because the claims aren't based on nothing. The sun has demonstrated that he will physically hurt the other planets, specifically with his solar flares. Although he can't fully control his solar flares or coronal mass ejections, he does have some control over where he aims them, telling Mercury that he would aim his solar flares at Venus instead of him. The sun is also a control freak and very clingy. He uses physical strength to intimidate the planets. His friendship with Mercury is somewhat forced on both of them, and Mercury does appear to, at times, be afraid of the sun. In one of the newer episodes, when Mars goes to confront the sun, Mercury attempts to stop him and is very desperate. He refuses to even look at the sun throughout most of the dialogue. Mercury has become more bold when standing up for himself, but he isn't willing to confront people past a certain point, and although he may be less scared of Venus now, he is still scared of the sun. The sun is willing to, and often does, use his power over Mercury to keep him in place. He changed the entire arrangement of the solar system to do so and could shoot him with solar flares. He was willing to risk the lives of everyone just to teach them a lesson about why they should stay in their orbits. The sun also refuses to take criticism and very obviously favors Mercury. He is extremely possessive of his friend, and apart from being clingy, he is stated to go through a lot of mood swings. And he is also hyper-aware of the fact that he is going to die and will take a few planets with him. A few of his actions can seem callous, mainly with the Earth in the solar system by size episodes. And he has issues picking up on others' emotions. He seems to lack a level of empathy or care for others, as seen when he willingly aims his solar flares at the planets and causes stress to the others during the Sun Trophy episodes. Keeping the Sun Trophy episodes in mind, he has the tendency to mistreat his friend and use physical force to keep him compliant. He is also just very unstable. His treatment of those he doesn't consider friends is much more harsh, and he has shown that he is willing to use much stronger physical force on them. Additionally, he also has an extremely short fuse. Being called clingy was enough to send him into a blind rage. Those are the general arguments for Sun being a villain. And this is why I think that the sun isn't a villain and how some of the arguments fail. My biggest issue is that people have called Sun a psychopath when he is not. Psychopath as a term has been removed from its original meaning, and it's outdated as both psychopath and sociopath are both considered to be part of antisocial personality disorder, but that's not really the point. When people say the sun is a psychopath, they mean that he is unstable, quick to anger, actively malicious, and has little to no empathy for others. The last one is very clearly not true, as the sun shows empathy, or at the very least sympathy for the other characters, mainly Earth and Mercury. For the Earth, he is able to identify that although the humans might not care about Earth, the Earth cares about them. With Mercury, he is able to recognize when he is upset, as seen in the therapy ad, yes, I am going to include that, it counts. Although he isn't always able to recognize when Mercury is uncomfortable, he can still pick up on when Mercury is sad or lonely. An example of him both missing and picking up on Mercury's emotions can be seen in My Best Friend, the Sun, where he doesn't realize that Mercury is uncomfortable when he's laughing, but he is able to recognize that Mercury wants to hang out with the other planets. And he does allow Mercury to go outside of his orbit and talk to the other characters. He is more okay with the others doing it because he doesn't talk to them. He wants Mercury around because Mercury is his only friend. And on the topic of their friendship, I think that the largest part of why they are friends is because they are close together and lonely in a very specific way. The Sun is the center of the solar system, yet he has no connections, and Mercury is technically the closest planet to every other planet, but he also doesn't have any genuine friends. The Sun was the only one who would talk to him. Venus stopped him from leaving his orbit, and no one really did anything about his mistreatment. They are both surrounded but alone, and that led them to becoming friends. Although it may have started out as a means to an end, I do think that they actually care about each other. Mercury doesn't want to only talk to the Sun, but he doesn't hate the Sun. I don't think he even dislikes him. Mercury hates Venus because he is an asshole to him, but he doesn't deny that he is friends with the Sun. He is very vocal about his hatred for Venus, even if he is afraid of him. But he never actually says that he dislikes the Sun, and a part of that could definitely be because the Sun can easily hurt him. But Mercury has stood up to the Sun before, and a handful of their interactions suggest to me that they care about each other and that he does view the Sun as his friend. Mercury gets very angry when Earth suggests that he was once a moon of Venus, but when Venus calls him the Sun's pet planet, which is objectively a lot more insulting, he has a much more mellow reaction. The Sun is more gentle with Mercury in a strange type of way. He doesn't hide who he considers his friends and who he doesn't. Every action that the Sun takes is either to keep the solar system in a normal state or to keep his friend close. Mercury is the only person he talks to. These are personified planets, meaning they have taken on human traits. It is not good for humans to not talk to other humans. It is bad for you to be isolated all of the time. Calling the Sun a psychopath feels almost cruel when considering this. Additionally, the Sun's actions read to me more as the result of being anxious rather than being malicious. His constant need to keep everything as normal really seems to come more from stress because that's his job. It's what he's supposed to do, and the others just don't give a fuck. Using physical force was the only way for him to get them to do what he needed them to do. His request for the planets to stay in their orbit isn't an unreasonable one. Although he may be aggressive about it, he isn't actively malicious. He wants things to be normal, and that is half of his motive for hitting Venus with a solar flare. The ending of if the solar system was arranged by size arc is that the solar system needs to stay that way that it is currently. The planets leave their orbit. This causes the Sun to become more stressed. The planets constantly are out of their orbits. The Sun is constantly stressed. When talking about anxiety and symptoms of anxiety, my psychology teacher said, if you are always stressed out, then you would be irritable too. And I think more people should think like that. Empathy is important, although I don't necessarily think that the Sun has anxiety, more so that there is cause and effect. He doesn't just force Mercury and the other planets back into their orbit because that wouldn't have solved the problem. He wants them to figure out on their own that they need to stay in their orbit. Also, when the Sun is meeting Astrodude, he isn't trying to be aggressive or scary. He wants to help. He doesn't fully understand what he's doing, he wants to help with the asteroid cake, and he wasn't trying to kill anyone. And I'm not trying to say that the Sun hasn't done anything wrong. He's definitely been in the wrong in a lot of situations. But I don't think he understands that what he is doing is wrong, at least not fully. And in my opinion, a part of being evil is like being able to understand that what you are doing is wrong. Also, a villain or antagonist would be a character who is in direct opposition to the protagonist, although villain more so implies morality. And the Sun technically is an antagonist at times, but he also sometimes just isn't. Like, in some circumstances, he's just an inciting incident or he's a background character, because Solar Pulse doesn't have a consistent main character, so it can't have a consistent antagonist. I like the Sun. I think he's a good character, and I don't think he's a villain. I don't really know how to end this thing. Sorry.